There we are. We got there in the end. How are you, Stephen?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. That was a bit of a mission, wasn't it?
Oh, my Lord. 53 years old and I've still not worked out how to use a phone, for heaven's sake.
I think what we both need to do is get like a 5-year-old in to do it for us. But well, thanks for joining us. Hopefully it'll stay good. We'll see how we get on. But so for those of you at home that are watching live just now, or you might be watching this later on a different platform, it'll be up on YouTube and a few other things. Let me introduce Stephen. Stephen Taylor's one of the leading World War II historians in the UK. I'm probably one of the leading finds experts. So in terms of identifying World War II things, I'll be correct in saying there's probably nothing that you can't identify as a Stephen. You are my go-to Google person.
Try my best. It's one of those things. I've got a garage full of relics, and in amongst the thousands and thousands of relics, I've got 2 items so far that I haven't yet identified.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have a bucket with stuff in it that I haven't yet identified, and there's still 2 things left in it. What normally happens is about 3 or 4 years after I found it, I'll be looking at something and go, oh, I've seen that somewhere before, and suddenly identify something. So,
or you'll look through it, but I know it happens. Some of the medieval and older finds, I'll be looking through books and go, "Ooh, I've got that somewhere," and it is normally in the garage in a scrap bucket or something like that. But for those of you who might not have seen Stephen before, I'm sure you have. He's done his knowledge and all this sort of this high-profile stuff has gotten onto television shows. You've been on Sky History, Channel 5, and many other things. But let's start off with the first question. All your Sky History stuff, this has got to be the most high-profile thing you've done, isn't it? Coming on the Hidden History Hunters live.
This has got more viewers than the Sky History channel show got. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, it'll go up, and we'll get it launched there. But so, I know when you launched the World War II Treasure Hunters one, that kind of sort of struck a chord with me because what really started me out of my sort of metal detecting career, if you want to call it, was as a kid I used to listen to my granddad's stories. He flew with Bomber Command on Lancasters and Wellingtons and did some great stuff, and that's why I got interested in World War II, and that's why I got my first metal detector actually many years ago. What started you with your sort of career in World War II history?
What started me off was basically I was on holiday. From when I was little, I used to do what every boy back in those days used to do, which was make airfix models. So my bedroom ceiling was always covered in various 1/72nd scale models. But I then got a book bought for me by my father when I was about 9 years old on World War II. So I used to collect books. And then I was on holiday in Normandy about 26, 27 years ago, and my son, who was 4 or 5 at the time, we were on this beach in Normandy, and he ran into the surf. It was a really windy day, and came back with a cartridge case in his hand. And I suddenly realized that that cartridge case, the last person to touch it was actually somebody who was involved in the biggest amphibious landing that there has ever been and will ever be. We'll never see anything like it again in our time. And that set me off. So about a month later, I had a metal detector, and off I went. I started hunting for World War II relics. I must admit, I spent the first 3 or 4 years finding nothing but condom wrappers, beer cans, and fag packets.
Yeah.
But at least I was finding something. And on one memorable occasion, I actually found a beer can in which was a fag packet and a condom wrapper. So somebody had a great time.
Yeah, someone had a good night, clearly. So, so with that, what came first? Was it the historian side of things and research in World War II, or was it the metal detector?
It was the fact that everything that I found, I could place who had probably used it. So it was the history of the individual artifact. Yeah. I knew where it was found, who probably used it, and what it was used for. Yeah. So a lot of people still say to me, well, why do you keep taking home 303 cartridges? And I say, well, yeah, okay, I've got about 15,000 sat at home somewhere in various buckets and boxes, but every single one of them still gives me the same goosebumps that the first one gave me. So it was involved in World War II, you know.
So you're still equally as excited at finding 303 now than you were years back?
Sorry, say that again. For some reason, your volume's gone right down, and I can't work out why.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I think it's me. It's because my girlfriend is finding it increasingly humorous to text me while I'm talking to you.
Yeah, and then just so your phone keeps muting out and things like that. Can you hear me now? So With the TV side of things, we'll come on to TV side of things. But one of the things, so when I watched your YouTube from the early days when you were out finding things. With the finds, and now you had some big significant finds from Spitfires to British tanks. I think it was a Canadian tank actually, wasn't it? What happened to the finds post show?
Well, it depended on it was very dependent on where we found them and if there were any museums nearby. So for instance, the Spitfire that we dug in Belgium belonged to the Belgian diggers that were digging it. The same with the Ferry Battle, that belonged to the French diggers that were digging it. Other things like the dig we did at Weedon at the British Army dump, there's actually a museum in Weedon Depot. But strangely enough, they didn't have any military items. It was just based on other things. So everything was donated to them. But other areas like Kingscliff, there is nobody there that is collecting anything from Kingscliff. So that all the finds from Kingscliff are sat in a cupboard in my display cabinets with World War II Treasure Hunters Kingscliff episode written on it. So they're all sat here. But I'm well known in the World War II relic collecting community to never have sold anything that I've ever found. I just don't understand the reason for selling it. It's not something that crosses my mind. So I've got everything that I've ever found. So
are you a collector or hoarder? There's a fine...
Probably a mix of both, I would think. Once you get to about 15,303s, I think that's fairly big. That's classed as hoarding, isn't it?
Yeah, let's be honest. Yeah, I think we're all sort of guilty of that to a point. But with all of this, so you take up a hobby and you enjoy it and you research it and you do all the things that you do and you go out looking for things. But there's a quite a distinct difference in being a hobbyist and then becoming an expert. Where do you even know whether you crossed the line from being someone who just did something for a hobby and then became what you are now, which is one of the leading experts in World War II? Where do you think that happened?
It happened whilst I was digging. So what I found myself doing was actually remembering everything that I'd dug up. So how it looked, how it felt, what the markings were on it. And then just researching each and every item that I recovered. So it got to the point where, you see, one of the things that kind of annoys me is that I've had quite a few people say to me about World War II Treasure Hunters that, do you know, Stephen, it's really obvious that somebody's telling you what that stuff is that's coming out of the ground. I'm not. They're not. When the cameras roll and I'm sat there going, yeah, Duncan, it's a number 860 bomb fuse. It's a barometric fuse. It was used on flare markers. That's the camera rolling from the split second he takes it out of the ground, because I already know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's just this. I suppose really it's just a retention of knowledge. Really, it's just the stuff that I found.
For the people who doubt it, I can vouch for the fact that you're telling the truth, because I've been out with other guys and I've been digging around here and I've pulled up bits of World War II stuff. And it is quicker to text you a picture than it is for me to try and search through Google, because you normally come back with the answer in about 30. If you're on your phone, within about 30 seconds, you'll tell me if there's a serial number on there. So I can vouch for it on that side of things.
The best example I've got of it, actually, when the cameras weren't rolling, was I was once digging at, because a lot of the sites that were in the television series, I had knowledge of anyway, or I'd already dug them. So I was digging Weedon dump site once with my best mate Reg. Yeah. And I asked him to clear the nettles away from the side of the hole that I was digging, because they kept getting in my face. And he was relatively new to digging, so bless him, he was clearing the nettles away. And he looked down and he went, oh, look at that. It's the sole of a shoe, and pulled up this rubber sole of a shoe. And about 10 seconds later, he went, judging by the amount you're swearing at me, I don't think it's the sole of the shoe, is it? I said, no, it's not. And I'll cut the swearing out. I said, it's the rubber shoulder pad from a Pier. And he'd found the rubber shoulder pad from a Pier that sits on the back of the shoulder plate itself to give you some sort of protection. Yeah. It was pretty useless, to be honest, because the Pier was a beast of a weapon. Yeah. But he'd found the rubber shoulder pad to a Pier. And he held that against me for about 4 years, until we were again digging at Weedon and I found a rubber shoulder pad. So he now can't hold it against, because he used to say, I've got one and you've not. Well, I've now got one as well. So
in fact, you have a Piat in your collection, haven't you?
Sorry?
You have got a Piat in your collection as well, haven't you?
I've got a 1/6 scale Piat. I've got lots of bits to it. I've got sears, I've got triggers, I've got the spigot itself, but not a full Piat. I've got a Piat bomb that was found on an old range, and very kindly the Ministry of Defence had written inert on it. So when that came out of the ground, and it says inert on it, well, thanks very much.
In fact, that's probably what I'm thinking about. Yeah, is the actual round for it and not the launcher itself. But so, just by the nature of what you do and the type of digs that you go on, there's obviously got to be an element of danger to it, because you're digging up World War II aircraft and you're in sort of dumps where there is munitions and things. Is there a sort of time that stands out as being the most sort of hair-raising or dangerous time? What sort of sticks in your mind for that?
Yeah, the biggest time that sticks in my mind was when I was out filming in Latvia.
Yeah.
That was for the first television show that I did, which I rarely talk about, to tell you the truth, because it was, it nearly did for me, that show.
Yeah.
But we had a day off filming, and the Latvian crew said, do you want to come with us? We're going into a new patch of woodland we've just heard about. So I said, yeah, I'll come with you. So I went out there, and there's all these 6'5" Latvian blokes, they're the same across as they are tall, went trudging into this forest, and I took one step inside the line of trees and nearly stood on a Russian 45mm high explosive shell just lying on the ground.
Wow.
So I stepped to one side to come out of the way of it, and nearly stood on a 7.5 centimeter, German shell. Stood to one side of it, nearly stood on RPG 40 grenade. And I just stopped, and I looked across this woodland on the floor, and it was just littered with grenades, artillery shells. And it's because the Russian government, back in the days of the Cold War, had completely sectioned off huge sections of Latvia for training their own army, but they never used it. So they never cleared it. So all the World War II stuff was still there. And it's just lying all on the surface. And it was amazing. I asked the Latvian guys if I could go anywhere where I wouldn't run the risk of being blown to pieces. And they said, yeah, there's a square of ground there, look, it's slightly depressed. That's where a bunker was. Go and dig in there. You'll find personal stuff. 5 minutes later, I'd got 4 RG-42 grenades and 4 F1 grenades, all live, all within about 6 inches of the surface, on the side of the hole, with a big group of Latvian guys stood behind me just laughing their heads off, because they knew damn well that stuff would be in there. So yeah, dangerous.
What happened with that? I guess their EOD would come in and collect them up, did they? Or is it much happens in France where you pile it up and they'll come along at a certain date? Or
that's exactly what they did. So the Latvian guys just picked it all up, put it in one set location, and at the end of the day, Latvian EOD turn up, and they know that they're on first name terms with these guys. In fact, they actually joined us around the campfire in the evening after they'd blown the living daylights out of all this stuff. They sat around the campfire, everybody with 1 bottle of vodka each, and not a hangover in sight in the morning.
So drunk people, munitions, campfires, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, to be honest with you, what could possibly go wrong was that I was sat there at the campfire next to one of the EOD guys, and every now and again the fire would go woof, and this big red flame would jump up. And it wasn't until about 5 minutes after this started that I noticed that the Latvian EOD guy had got an F1 grenade with the bottom cut out of it, and he was spooning the TNT out and flicking it into the fire. Excellent. So kind of health and safety doesn't apply in Latvia so much as it does here.
So with all the digs that you've been on, and you've been on many now, and I've watched like the sort of the ones that have been released on television and everything, what sticks in your mind is the most sort of memorable one in terms of finds or just sort of feeling wise? What was the most poignant one for you? That's the word I'm looking for.
That's difficult to answer, actually. There's 2 that always stick in my mind. The first one was Quorn, and that was poignant for a slightly different reason than most, actually. So Quorn, I was warned, this is where the 82nd Airborne were based, and then it turned into a German POW camp.
Yeah. I
was warned before I went out there, only about a week before filming, that it had been completely searched to bits by metal detectorists, and I thought it hadn't. So I ended up taking 20 metal detectorists with me, just in the hope of finding something. Yeah. And we ended up with 450 finds. Wow. We had 7 German dog tags, we had 2 American dog tags, we had loads and loads of stuff. So that was a big relief, and that one was perhaps the most relieving, because I really did think we weren't going to find anything. But the reason it was poignant was that we spoke to a guy who was a child in the war, who told us this story of coming onto the camp when the Americans were there and nicking stuff out of their dump. And his name was Noel Fielding, and he actually died about 6 weeks after the filming had been finished. So that was quite poignant that we managed to get his recollection of the story on camera before he died. Yeah, the other one is Sandy Valentine, the pilot of the Defiant that we dug on Nocton Fen.
Yeah.
He was incredibly unlucky. He went to Harley Street to go and have an operation because he'd got a problem with his ear. And with his ear? I think it was his ear. Anyway, they ended up accidentally chopping through his optic nerve. So he was grounded, and he ended up on ground forces on D-Day +1, ended up in Normandy and got killed in Normandy when he shouldn't really have been there because he was a pilot.
Oh, wow.
And it was the fact that his daughter was there, who'd never actually, could never recall him because she was only 1 or 2 by the time he went back to war again. So that was the hardest one for me, because we went to the grave of Sandy Valentine in Douvres. And of course, Christine was almost inconsolable because it's the first time she'd ever visited his grave. But I'm still in touch with Christine now. She's a curious old bird.
Is that you being tactful by that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Never been propositioned by a 75-year-old before.
Can't knock it, can you? You got so without. Yeah. So your website, your database, I've gone to it a few times to look for things, and it's probably one of the most comprehensive ones out there. How long did that take to put and get it to the way it is? Because it's a
yeah. Well, let's have a think. So the page that is solely on 303 head stamps probably took me about 8 or 9 days to put together.
Yeah.
To get it to a state at which I was happy with it. So it's all the diagrams, all the tables, and everything else. But I've got a very firm belief that knowledge is completely useless unless you share it. So I'm not going to sit here with all this stuff in my head. It needs sharing.
No, I agree with that, and hence why this was one of the reasons that the group that we're chatting on today was set up, because you can only know so much, and you find things, and there's always someone within the group who knows or seen it before, and without sharing it, it's pointless, really, isn't it? But there's a wealth of information on there. It's for those of you who are watching that haven't, if you're interested in World War II and you haven't gone on there, it's definitely, I'll put a link up later on, it's definitely worth a look. David Hendry, he's on tonight. I'm sure he's been on there many times. So out of all the finds that you've had, and we'll talk about your collection a bit because I've seen some photos of it and it's quite impressive. I've only seen photos of part of it. If your house was on fire, God forbid, and you had to keep one find from your collection, could you make that decision?
No. I would be very badly burnt if I had to rescue any of it. The good thing about the vast majority of my stuff is that it's metal. So if my house is burning down, I'm getting out, and I'll retrieve it later on.
Yeah, but is there any?
I have got a the best find that I ever made. I don't have anymore because I returned it to the pilot's brother, which was the body of a watch, just the body of the watch itself, no insides, and I found that at RAF Kingscliff. Unfortunately, on the back of it, the gentleman had his name inscribed. His name was Oliver Jelks. And because his surname was so unusual, within 24 hours, I was talking to a lady in America who was researching the Jelks family, and she put me in touch with his brother. And I found out that he'd been given the watch as a graduation present by his parents in 1936, and his brother can even remember getting a letter from him saying, I've lost Mum and Dad's watch. And I found it 70 odd years later. So whilst I don't have it anymore, I have actually got a frame with pictures in it. So I think I've saved that frame, to be honest, because it's that's a good one. That one is. Yeah,
no, it sticks in your mind. No, there are finds that stick in your mind. Out of all the things, I've been lucky and I found some wonderful things. But I once found, and I'm going back a few years now, a World War I 3-draw telescope, military telescope.
Okay.
And I posted it up on the group, and long story short, one of the guys, and he's watching tonight, he came back saying, I know who that belongs to. And I wrote an article on it. It's on my website. And it was a chap back in, I think, 60s or 70s. And he was using his dad's or his granddad's telescope. And he used to go to the camp here, sit in the field and watch the aircraft taking off and landing. And he lost it, and he was mortified. And then one day, Steve and I was out detecting it, and I found this telescope, and it was spotted, and someone knew who it belonged to, and it was reunited with a chap who was, yeah, quite emotional about it.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, so the ones that have no real huge historic sort of significance or value to it are sometimes the best one, in my opinion anyway, sometimes the best finds. So that one sticks in my mind, and it was nice to be able to find something and give it back.
Yeah, very much so. The interesting thing is that at the same base where I found Oliver Jelks's watch, about 3 months after I found that, excuse me just a second, I'm just putting my computer out the way because it's not going to work. About 3 months after that, I found a fork, just a plain dinner fork with somebody's name and service number on it, and I tracked him down as well. His name was Valentine Zavol, and he was one of the ground crew at Kingscliff, and he had 6 children, and I ended up ringing one of his daughters, who basically told me to shove the fork where the sun don't shine. And she was the rudest person I'd ever spoken to in my entire life. I kept saying to her, I don't want anything for it. I just want to return your father's belongings to you. Yeah. And about a month after I'd spoken to her, I rang another one of his daughters, and she did the same thing. She told me to shove the spoon, so the fork. So the only thing I can assume is that Valentine Zawol wasn't a very nice chap.
Possibly. Yeah.
Possibly. So that fork still sits in my collection, but I tracked his family down.
So let's talk metal detecting, and I know that's why people listen tonight, and people are going to watch it later on. You must find, and we've had this conversation in the past, but we'll go over it again. You must find things that are pre-World War II. So you must find the medieval and the Bronze Age and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Steve's still watching. Now, Steve and I detect a lot together. He has no interest in World War II, and he normally throws it in the hedge. Nowadays, he throws it toward me so I can have a look at it first. Do you just throw the medieval stuff in the hedge? What happens with the old stuff that you find?
It depends where I am. Most of the time, any medieval or Roman stuff or anything like that I find, I'll just give it to the landowner because I am not in the slightest bit interested.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's gold. I've never found anything gold, actually. I found a few silver pieces. I'm not interested. It's either going in the nearest hedge or it's going to the landowner. So recently I've decided that probably the better way to do it is give it to the landowner, because I have to admit, when I first started, it went in the nearest hedge. Yeah.
So I think probably from now on, anything Roman or medieval you find, just post it to me. I'll throw it in. So permission-wise then, and one of the big bugbears with detecting, especially nowadays, because it's quite a popular thing, it's hard to get permissions, and people sort of on this group are good, and we share permissions, and people go out and we sort of detect with each other. Do you find now it's easier from your TV fame to be able to get permissions? Does it hold or bear? No, it's equally as hard, is it?
No, it's equally as easy. I've never once been declined permission to go on any land.
Really?
Really, and the secret is I have conversations with people about this an awful lot of the time. The secret is to be polite, to be well dressed, and I don't mean in a suit and a tie. I mean just well dressed. Don't turn up in your camo gear with muddy boots on. Nice and well dressed, nice and polite. Get past the first 15-20 seconds of get off my land, don't ever come back again. Explain to them what you want to look for. Explain to them that if you want, I'll sign an agreement that everything comes to you. This is what I do as a day job. I'm a clinical pharmacist, blah, blah, blah. I'm just looking at World War II stuff. And I've been away. I've never once been declined permission. Now, I have to say, I've only got, about 20 sites that I've dug over the years. But it's still never been declined. I still do it now. In fact, most of the sites that we dug for World War II Treasure Hunters, apart from the one in France and Belgium, I'd already got permission for. I just spoke to them and said, this is what we want to do.
Okay, so the ones that you did for the TV series, you'd already gained that. It wasn't the producers doing that in the background for you, or?
No, all of the sites were already known by me. I'd already dug them. Apart from, I'd already dug most of them. So Quorn I'd never dug, but Kingscliff I'd dug, Duxford I'd dug. A lot of them I'd already been to, so I knew there was stuff there. And what you find when you do a television show is that the first thing they say to you is, right, we want to do a television show, but you've got to guarantee me you're going to find something. Well, hang on, you've got a devout misconception about how metal detecting works. It doesn't work like that. I can give you chances, but I can't give you a guarantee.
Yeah.
So a lot of the sites were ones that I already knew I would find stuff in.
So you in terms of you looking for permission and deciding where to go, how does that start for you? Does it start from research, or does it go with it starts at
the two? I have a couple of basic requirements of any site. So the first one that I find that over the years I found most important is that if the site has got a patch of woodland that has been there since World War II, that is a really good starting point, because I know it's never been dug on, I know it's never been ploughed, I know it's never been built on. So whatever was dropped there in World War II is probably still there.
Yeah.
The second thing is that it's got to be a fairly decent distance away from the nearest town. As I said at the beginning, when I first started, I used to find beer cans, fag packets, and condom wrappers, because I was searching at sites that were within a mile or two of the nearest town, and the kids were just using it for arsing about. So and no modern use. I can get away with it, but what you find is that you spend the first couple of visits there just clearing all the cake tins and Coke cans from the guys that are working the site before you can get to the World War II stuff.
Yeah.
But it all starts, every single site that I've dug has always started with research. So it's either Google Earth or knowledge of a base. Somebody has told me about a base.
Yeah.
So that's how it normally starts.
So it's because for us, you can do all the research, and I'm on various paid websites and things, and Archie sort of type sites, and you'll do all the research in the world. And often the sites that I do quite a bit down south, and I'll go to Roman forts, and you think I'm going to be tripping over the Roman, and I'm going to be filling my car up, and you find nothing. And then you step into the field that has no sort of recorded history with it, and often that's where we sort of strike it lucky. But for you, I guess you're looking for World War II airfields and the dumps that come with those as well, especially if it's in America where they buried things and didn't take it home. So possibly you think it's perhaps easier to select a site than it would be if you're looking for medieval stuff, or
a damn sight easier.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons it's easier and it's more productive is the fact that there was just so much stuff used on a World War II site.
Yeah.
And you can pinpoint it. So medieval sites, right, you could probably tell where the battlefield is, but Pounto Bentepney, it's a scheduled monument, so you're not going to be allowed on there. World War II sites, there's virtually none of them that are scheduled. The only one that I ever came across was an old mortar range that is not recorded anywhere, that was found by a guy walking his dog, who said to me one day, I'm sure I saw a 2-inch mortar poking out the ground in so-and-so a field. So I went down there, and there was 2-inch mortar fins lying all over the place, but no record of this range at all. The farmer appeared because I'd said to him, is it all right if I go down and have a look? And when I first spoke to him, he said no, because on the aerial photographs, there's a square patch of trees. And he said the square patch of trees is actually an old medieval fort, and the square trees follows the line of the old wall of where the fort was. And he says he has a hell of a problem with nighthawkers going down there trying to find all the medieval stuff. Right. But as soon as I explained, no, I'm after all the explosives, he wasn't bothered. So it's just the way it happens. Sometimes people tell you stuff, and Bob's your uncle. You found a site that has never been seen before. I spent an hour at that site the first time. I turned my metal detector off after 15 minutes because there was no point in having it. Yeah. And my car was at a 45-degree angle going home because of all the mortar fins I'd got in.
Loaded up to the brim. So with the metal, again, medieval, Bronze Age, whatever you're looking for, Roman, the type of detecting you do is quite different, isn't it? Because I can only imagine that, and we'll talk about detection in a minute, but you only really detect with all your discrimination off, because you want to hear everything. You want to hear the iron tones. You want to hear the lot. But is that sort of correct in saying that, or?
Yeah, you are. Yeah. I very rarely have my discrimination on. What I tend to do is within half an hour of getting to a site, I'll have learned what most of the signals are. So I'm always finding what everybody else finds, which is shotgun cartridge bases. They're all over the place. But within half an hour, I've learned the tone that I'm getting and the numbers that I'm getting off shotgun cases. So for the first half an hour, I will dig everything, learn what's good and what's not, and then just carry on doing it that way. So a lot of my detecting is done on size as well. So you guys digging your medieval coins and your Roman coins and what have you, it's a tiny little pinpoint. If I find something like a Pier bomb, it's a dirty great big signal that goes on for about 1.5 foot. It's a big signal. So you've got something down there.
And with detectors, so the first detector you bought, was what? Can you remember what that was? What did you start using?
It was a bounty hunter. Just before we go any further, do you know how to raise your volume? Because my cat is now. I've got a new cat and it's in the litter tray and I can't hear what he's saying.
I don't know if there's any way I can measure it. So I've got Digger Dog downstairs. I can hear him shouting. So you've got your cat. We're not off to a great start. Is that any better?
Oh, it's all right. The cat's reappeared. Right. Okay. So yes, the first metal detector that I ever bought was a bounty hunter. I think it was a Tracker 4. I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a bounty hunter Lone Star, I think. And normal metal detectorists used to piddle themselves laughing at me when I turned up at sites with these bounty hunters. But what they completely failed to realise was that it was good enough for what I needed it for. I don't need to find a thin sliver of a quarter of a coin 12 inches down. I'm trying to find a 303 cartridge 3 inches down. I don't need a 800-pound metal detector to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a basic misconception about things, and it kind of highlighted to me as well quite early on the kind of hierarchy that you get in the metal detecting world. So yeah, I've got a Deuce. Have you? Okay, good.
There is a certain, not in all respects, but there is a sort of certain snobbery as well, isn't there? And bizarrely enough, and you talked about that, some of the most significant hoards that have been, I've got my own theory about this, but that's for another thing. Significant hoards and things found have been with real entry-level machines as well. So, and it just goes to show, I mean, yes, the better machines, if you're looking for the tiny stuff in trashy areas, do help. But you've got to be lucky. You've got to walk over it in the first place. So what are you using now? I believe you're onto the Nox. Is that correct?
I'm onto the Nox now, yeah. But that I have to say was purely on the back of the television show.
Why not?
It's a Nox, High Mind Lab. I'm going to be on telly again. Do you want to loan me anything? So yeah, they loaned me a Nox.
Fantastic. If you had the choice to go anywhere, and I mean anywhere, to detect or to dig or research, sort of really get into a site, where would you go? Is there a sort of the dream site that you'd like to go to?
Well, I did actually get to go to it, but I've not been there in about 15 years now because of the way that all the laws changed and everything else. It's just the Normandy beaches. The Normandy beaches are still full of stuff. And particularly Omaha Beach is somewhere where I'd love to go back to, but it's a no-go area now. You just can't search there. I think the French government declared every relic from World War I and World War II property of the French state. So in theory, even if you buy something from one of the souvenir shops that's from World War II, you could get stopped at the border and have it confiscated, even if you've got a receipt.
And couldn't bring it back. Yeah.
So yeah, Normandy. I mean, there's lots of battle areas. I'd love to go to Libya, but again, it's a bit of a no-go area nowadays with ISIS and everything else. So
you might want to get yourself a set of body armor or something if you're going to go detecting out.
Yeah.
So for me, I still enjoy, and it's probably one of the main reasons I go out and detect. I love finding hammered coins. And I'm trying to think. I haven't been out that much this year. I don't even think I've found one this year. But hammered coins for me is the way forward. What is it for you? What is there a certain item that you look forward to finding or makes you smile when you find it?
Not especially, to be honest with you. It's just anything World War II just makes me smile. I've got certain things that I want to find, but whether or not I ever get the opportunity to do so is another thing. I mean, I've always wanted to find a piece of a Spitfire, and I did actually find a piece of a Spitfire. In fact, I found a whole blinking Spitfire in Belgium. But I've always wanted to find a piece of a Hawker Typhoon. It's my favourite aircraft of World War II, but I've never found a piece yet. Not that I could identify positively as being from a Typhoon. So there are certain things that I would love to find, but then again, there's certain things I would love to find, but that I then wouldn't know what to do with them. So I'd love to find a rifle or a machine gun or a pistol. But then what do I do with it? Because I'm very conscious of the law and I'm very conscious of the Firearms Act. And yes, I know it's a ground up relic and it's been deactivated by other means. But all you need is a police officer that wants to make a bit of a name for himself, and you're stuffed. You know, it's just not worth the risk. So yeah, there's lots of things that I'd like to find, but I don't know what I'd do with them if I did find them.
So how often do you get out detecting? And I know you go to so you do your research and you go to the organised events and you do the TV stuff and all the other things come with it. But for you, just you going out detecting, how often do you manage to get out there and do it?
I have to admit that I've not been out for at least a year now, basically because my day job is a clinical pharmacist and I work in an urgent care centre, so I've been a little bit busy recently.
Been a busy time,
and COVID put a stop to a lot of things. I wasn't prepared to break the guidelines and go travelling in a car when it was unnecessary. I've got a group called the WW2 Relic Retrieval and Preservation Group, which has basically been on hold since COVID hit. But when I do go digging, I have a rule that I have to have cleaned everything before I go again. So if I go somewhere and find 400 items, it's going to be a good 6 or 8 weeks before I go back out again, because I've still got a load of stuff to clean.
Oh, so you're talking clean the finds before you go back? Ah, okay.
Yeah, not my clothes and my boots.
I thought you meant like a polish your metal detector or... Oh, wow. I've got stuff in boxes that I dug up years ago. I've still not got around to cleaning yet. COVID was good for that, though, in a way that when we were in lockdown, what it did see was people returning to their finds boxes and actually digging through things that they just chucked in there. And myself included, people were finding some nice things that they didn't even realize they owned until they were bored and sat at home and started cleaning these things up. So maybe there is some logic to that as well.
There is, and it actually made me do certain things that I've been itching to do for years, but never thought I had the time to do it. So back in June 2019, which was the last big dig I went on, a farmer friend of mine said that somebody had found a pit on his land. They were doing some survey work for a new project that he was having. And when I went out and had a look at this pit, we discovered it was full of bomb fuses, all inert, because underneath all the bomb fuses was a layer of burnt and molten metal. And we found in there the tile breakers from incendiary bombs. So what they'd done basically was put a load of incendiary bombs at the bottom of this pit, piled all the bomb fuses on top of it, set fire to it, and retired to a safe distance. But underneath the molten metal, they'd also cleared out the gunnery range, the small arms range. So underneath the molten metal, there was, I estimated, around about 200,000 cartridge cases, spent cartridge cases, underneath this molten metal. So I can assure you 10,000 303s, even when they're fired and inert, weigh an awful lot. So I managed to recover about 10,000. And what I'd always wanted to do was make a disintegrating belt that would have been used in the wing of a Hurricane or a Spitfire. And I got around to doing that. I found a company that were selling brand new 303 bullets, so the projectile. I'd got 10,000 303 cartridges, all World War II dated. So I set about cleaning 300 of them, got 300 links, got 300 bullets, got 300 ball bearings to put in the cartridge cases so they rattled when you shook them so that people could see they were inert. And I made a 300 round disintegrating belt, World War II dated 303 cartridge cases.
I don't know whether that's keen or you've just got too much time.
Did take about a week and a half.
Sure, I'm sure. So what's happening next for you? Is there anything coming up TV wise? Have you got anything on the cards, books, any projects?
No, I have got a couple of ideas that are being thrown around at the minute at various TV companies, but COVID has done for an awful lot of the production that's been going on. So it's just a waiting game at the minute, just to see what's going on. But I've always been perfectly happy being just that bloke that goes digging World War II stuff. I don't have to be on the telly to enjoy it. I just enjoy it anyway. So
yeah, and that's good. Again, if you can go back to it, so I know for myself, sort of testing equipment and doing the bits and writing about stuff. Every now and again, it's nice to just pick up your favorite machine and just go out for a few hours for yourself, and not because you think, oh, test this because I need to review it. And it's a good escape, isn't it? It's nice, especially the way things are at the moment, where you can just go out and forget about things that are going on. But I've got one last question for you soon, and it's an important one. The black T-shirt. Come on, where's that come from? I know I'm wearing one tonight, but this is a branded one. So this is.
I've actually got one on as well, but only because I use them around the house when I'm not going anywhere. But the black T-shirt came from continuity.
It's almost, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is it because you started with it and you stuck with it, or?
Yeah, it's all down to continuity. So the very first day filming, the production company were meant to present me with clothing to wear that they wanted me to wear, and they did, but it was all the wrong size. So, and that's not saying I'm fat or anything. They just didn't account for the fact I'm 6'2". So I've got T-shirts that were finishing just at my belly button, you know, and I was just so I ended up in what I've got with me, which was some basically builder's trousers with big pockets in them, and the outside pockets of carrying your tools in, and a black T-shirt. And because I'd done the first day's filming in that, I then couldn't get out of it for the rest of that episode. I then realised that we would be doing filming in 3 months' time, where I would be doing things called pickups. So I'd be doing things that they were going to insert in that episode that were filmed 3 months later, and realised that if I started wearing different things for each show, I wouldn't know where the hell I was. So I got stuck in beige trousers and a black T-shirt. So I actually had 4 sets. I had 4 black T-shirts and 4 beige trousers.
So it wasn't a sort of strange affinity to Johnny Cash or anything like that then?
No affinity to Johnny Cash, and no strange desire for the whole world to be able to see my nipples either. I just never realised my nipples were so pointy, to be honest.
Well, actually, I hadn't noticed, but you know what? You're watching it back. That's what I'm going to focus on.
You're not the only one that hasn't. Everybody else has.
Oh God, that's it now. Ray Laidlaw, yeah, absolutely. Ask away. I think Ray's got a question he'd like to ask. I'll let him type that up whilst we carry on chatting. So, is he going to type up? Oh, you've gone. Is your phone falling over? You're taking us on the move. You're going to show us some collections now, are you?
This is in my living room. All of this is inert, by the way. Before people have a fit.
I don't think they will. Oh wow!
So this is my collection. A lot of this isn't ground dug, but every single cartridge case you see in there is ground dug. So I've dug it and then inserted it into magazines. And
some Bren mags there. Are they Bren?
Yeah, the Bren. Yeah. Wow. Lots of stuff, really.
So you've got to take that. That's got to be a nightmare to dust.
It's in a glass cabinet, so I don't need to.
That's not too bad then. And
there's the Pier that you were talking about.
Yeah, the Pier round, and what else you got tucked away in there? You got. What is
RPG 40?
Is that 40? Is it? I'm trying to work out what that is.
RPG 43. That's an RG 42 grenade, Russian grenade. Down there, there's a S mine, a German S mine, German stick grenade, stock mines, and then up here we've got just a couple of grenades and mortars, and then my collection of bills.
What you're showing there is what Steve Shorter sort of grew up handling around his house. That's how he survived, is handling those things.
Oh, it's that's my fireplace. Look, this is what happens when you're a single bloke living on your own.
Are they
artillery shells on your cartridge case? And
that wasn't a Beaufort.
That is actually that is a really interesting piece. World War II Treasure Hunters. We dug up a Junkers 88 on that marsh, Banks Marsh. That is actually made from the main wing spar of that very same Junkers 88. So it's the model of a Junkers 88 made from the wing spar of that Junkers 88.
That's impressive. And that was the Junkers. Was that the one, if I'm correct, you struggled finding it because the coastline had moved? Was that right?
Yeah, just a minor correction. It wasn't me that struggled to find it, because I have to say I would have realised that the coastline had bloody moved over 70 years. It was the aircraft recovery team that had trouble finding it.
So at any point, because you work with these guys and you sit back watching, did you want to just jump in and go, no, do it this way, but couldn't?
Not with those guys, because I'd never actually done aircraft recovery before, so I let them to it. However you want to work the digger. It's not up to me, you do it. What was interesting was realizing that they gained respect for me quite quickly, because when you think about it, I'm just some bloke that says he knows stuff about World War II and he turns up to do a television show. They were taking stuff out of the ground, like in Belgium. Some guy came over to me with a great big wad of mud and said, "Here, what's this?" I said, "That's the radio selector buttons from the side of the cockpit. It sits on the left-hand side in the cockpit. And it's got bulbs down. Look, there's the bulbs down there. And you go A, B, C, D." And he just stood there looking at me gobsmacked, because it was just a lump of mud. But it's about gaining respect and showing people that you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and you never stop learning. It doesn't matter what sort of field you're in, what interests you. You're constantly reading, you're constantly learning. And the exciting part for me, and I'm guessing it maybe to a point still happens for you, is finding something that you don't recognize. I enjoy that more than anything else, where you have to research it or ask someone, and then you learn something else, which is great.
Yeah, very much so. And I've lost track of the amount of times that's happened. But with each and every item that I pull out of the ground that I don't know what it is, I then know what it is. So I'll never have that again with that particular item.
And that's it, and it's logged in, because you do so much research into it. That image is logged in your mind. And the worst part for me is someone will post something up for an idea or something, and I think, oh, I've seen that, I know what it is, but you just can't dredge it out. It takes ages to dredge it out your memory, and then someone else do it. But that's the way it is. But Stephen, it's been great chatting with you, and it's been really interesting, and I really appreciate you taking the time.